Hello everyone. In this lesson, we're going to connect the dots between our Laravel backend and client-side JavaScript. Right? We want to build our live search results feature. Now, in order to accomplish this, we're going to use the official Laravel Vite setup. And this is great for asset bundling like JavaScript files and CSS files. Let's jump into the action and let me explain what we're going to do. So we know that we want to set things up so that when you click this search icon in the header, some sort of overlay or modal or pop-up appears, and then you can start typing in the search field for what you want to search for. Now, we want this to be asynchronous or on the fly, right? We don't want a full page request. We want client-side JavaScript to request the appropriate search results URL and show the user the results in real time. Now, there are a million different ways that you could set that up and make that happen. And this is actually where things get a little bit confusing because when it comes to client-side JavaScript, it's impossible to not be opinionated. I'm going to be as unopinionated as possible. So you could use something like React, you could use something like Vue, you could use Angular, you could write just plain vanilla JavaScript. And then even beyond that, in terms of bundling up all your JavaScript files and your CSS files, you could use Webpack, you could use Parcel, you could use Rollup, you could use Vite, you could use Create React App. There's a million different bundlers and tools out there. But luckily for us, Laravel has a built-in setup using Vite. And it makes, bundling up your JavaScript and CSS super easy, super efficient, and super clean. I'm a huge fan of this approach. But I guess what I'm trying to let you know is that that's a little bit opinionated, right? So I'm not trying to say there's only one right way to use JavaScript in Laravel. There's a billion right ways. This is just what I would, consider the most official or, unopinionated way. Now, regardless of which route we take to work with client-side JavaScript, one thing is for sure, and that is that we're going to need to have Node.js installed on our computer. There's just no getting around that. So right now, if you don't already have Node on your computer, I recommend you pause this video lesson and visit the official Node website and just download the long-term support, this LTS version here on the left-hand corner. It doesn't need to be the exact same version number. If you're watching this video in the future, your version number will be different than what you see on the screen right now. That's okay. Just choose the LTS version, and regardless of whether you're on Windows or Mac, you can just download this file, find the downloaded file, double-click it. All of the default options are perfect. So just open up the downloaded file and click Next, Next, Next until it's finished. Cool. Once that finishes and you've installed Node.js on your computer, we're ready to get started, and we're going to use the official Laravel asset bundling approach. Now, it doesn't get much more official than this. In the folder that we've been building our Laravel project in, down towards the bottom, you'll see that there's a file named package.json. So right now, what we're going to do, we're going to use Node to install all the ingredients from package.json that we would need. So just open up your command line, and instead of using Composer to install our dependencies from a PHP perspective, we're going to use Node to install our JavaScript dependencies. So Laravel already created this file for us, and now to just install the dependencies, we say npm install. That's it. Go ahead and press enter. Cool. Now, as soon as that finishes, that means we have everything we need. But before we go tell Laravel to start watching and bundling up our files for us, let's first go actually find the CSS and JavaScript files that Laravel would be watching. So let's just dig into our resources folder, and let's start with JavaScript. So you see there's a JavaScript folder, JS. Let's go into that folder, and I want you to open up this app.js file. So Laravel includes this one line for us. It imports a bit of its own JavaScript, a bit of boilerplate. Below that line, let's just write a test message. So let's have an annoying alert, just a test pop-up that says, alert, this is a test 1, 2, 3, period. Cool, let's give that a save. And now let's think about our CSS. So in the resources folder, you'll see there's a CSS folder, and you can jump into app.css. In this file, let's just copy and paste and move over our existing CSS. So in other words, I want you to go into our public folder, the top level public folder, and remember we added this file called main.css. Just open up main.css, press Control or Command A to select every single line in this file, copy that into your clipboard, okay? And then with that in your clipboard, just paste it into this app.css file that lives in resources in the CSS folder. So I'm going to paste it in here, hit save. With that saved, you can now delete the main.css file that lived in our top level public folder. So I'm going to delete that old main.css file. Cool. Now at the moment, if you refreshed the website, you're going to lose all of your custom styling. So now let's just go adjust our layout component to actually look towards our new Laravel managed CSS and JavaScript assets. So you would just open up your file that's named layoutblade.php. And you could actually delete this line. For me, it's around line 18, but it's the line where we're trying to import, the main.css file. So you could delete that line entirely. And instead, in its place, so at the very bottom of the head section, right before the closing head tag, do this with me. Let's say @Vite. Well, it looks like it might be pronounced Vite, but it's pronounced Vite. Parentheses to call that. And then we give it an array with just one string of text. And let's say resources /CSS /app.css. Okay, and then let's just do that one more time right below that. So @Vite. Parentheses to call it, square brackets, quotes, resources / the JS folder /app.js. Cool. Now, if we save that, we still won't see the CSS that we copied over if we refresh. In fact, we'll actually see an error message, and this is because we haven't actually told Laravel to start watching our CSS and JavaScript files for changes so that it can bundle them up for us. So check this out. In your command line, I want you to just say npm run dev. I'll explain what this does in just a moment, but go ahead and press enter, npm run dev. And with that up and running in the background, Laravel is going to watch us. It's going to watch these two files for changes, and anytime we save a change to one of our main JavaScript or CSS files, it's going to rebundle up, the resulting output files for us. And at this point, now we can refresh our homepage. Beautiful. We see this is a test. That's the JavaScript alert pop-up. So you can click OK. And now here's the really cool part. If we just change this to, this is a test, and I get rid of 1, 2, 3, but I put, exclamations and hit save, I don't even need to refresh in the browser. Laravel and our Vite setup automatically refresh and reload that newest JavaScript for us. And if I went into my CSS file, for example, app.css, you don't need to do this, but if I deleted everything in that file and hit save, Laravel automatically refreshes the browser for us. Let me go put that CSS right back, hit save. Cool. And actually, you can see it doesn't even reload the browser with a full page refresh. I didn't even lose my text selection here. It actually just injects the newest code on the fly. Cool. Now, in addition to that npm run dev command that's going to watch you for changes and rebundle up every time, let's press Control-C. In addition to that, I want to show you another command, which is npm run build. Go ahead and push enter. So what that's going to do, you can see now in our top level public folder, that creates a build folder. And that's going to contain the versions of our CSS and JavaScript that are, minified and designed for the public. So now you can go back to your website and refresh the home page. And even though that dev task is not running in the background, that's okay. Laravel will see that it's not running and it will just load the public build files instead. But if you want those super cool features, the lightning fast refresh, the setup that's designed for local development, then you want to be sure to always have that npm run dev task up and running. So just leave it running. As long as you don't press Control-C, it's just going to continue to run. So I usually just have one command line that has my PHP artisan serve command up and running ongoing, and then one command line for my asset bundling. Cool. Now at this point, let's actually change gears and focus on the task at hand, which is we wanted to make this search feature come to life. Now again, this is not a course about JavaScript and writing out JavaScript line by line together. I have an entire 26-hour video course dedicated to JavaScript if that's what you are interested in. In this course, we want to stay focused on Laravel. So, now that we've seen how Laravel can manage our JavaScript and CSS assets for us, and we've seen how to build out the back-end search endpoint or URL to power this, the data-driven needs of this feature, there's no sense in us writing all the JavaScript, the client-side JavaScript line by line. So here's what we're going to do. In the folder that we've been borrowing from, the HTML templates folder, if you dig inside that, you'll notice that there's a file named live-search.js. Here's what I want you to do. Go ahead and open that file up, the file that we'd be borrowing code from. So here it is, live-search.js. Just select everything in this entire file. So Control A or Command A, copy that into your clipboard, and then back in VS Code, here's what I want you to do. In our resources folder, and then on the JS JavaScript folder, let's create a new file in the JS folder. So I'm just going to right click on JS, new file, and let's name it, live-search.js. In this file, just paste in your clipboard. Cool. Let's go ahead and hit save. And now before we actually implement this and tie this into our main app.js file, I want to let you know something, and that is that, and this has nothing to do with Laravel, the code that I've already written, the JavaScript client-side code to power the live search results, I'm using a package called DOM Purify. And this is just to make sure that no cross-site scripting attacks can occur. So in other words, even if malicious HTML code somehow ended up in our database, like even if that worst case scenario happened, this JavaScript is not going to let the malicious code actually get rendered. So this is just another safeguard. And again, this has absolutely nothing to do with Laravel. This DOM Purify package is just a JavaScript package on NPM that I'm a big fan of. So even though this has nothing to do with Laravel, we need to go install this package. So just open up your command line. You can actually open a brand new, third command line if you wanted to, and just say npm install, and the name of the package that I'm using is DOM Purify, all one word, just DOM Purify. Go ahead and press enter. Cool. And now let's go into our main app.js file and let's import that live search file. So up at the top here, below Bootstrap, I would just say, import. And I named my JavaScript class uppercase search in the live search file. So let's say import uppercase search from quotes and then just, / to look in the current folder for the file named live-search. You do not need to include the .js, just the first part of the file name. Cool. Now for this next detail, this again has nothing to do with Laravel. This is just my own personal preference for how I write plain JavaScript. But let's get rid of this alert message. And I'm going to say only if, parentheses, curly brackets, and essentially I only want to instantiate a new instance of my search class only if the current web page actually has this search icon in the header, right? Because in other words, if you're signed out, if you're logged out, there is no search icon in the header, so we don't even need to instantiate the JavaScript that would power that search feature. Let me log back in really quick. So here's what I would say. If document.querySelector, call that with parentheses, quotes, a dot for an HTML class, if there's an element with .header-search-icon. If that evaluates to true, then in the body of the if statement, I would just instantiate a new instance of our search class. Cool, let's go ahead and save this file. And you will need to make sure that one of your command lines has the npm run dev task up and running, but assuming that you have that set up, if you go back to your browser and refresh the home, actually you don't even need to refresh, that's the beauty of the Laravel asset management system. It refreshes and injects the newest code for you, but I can click this search icon, and if I search for the word Brad, beautiful, or if I search for the word dog, cool, or if I search for the word post, there's a lot of results for that. Also, if you search for the word lorem, there's going to be a ton of results, but you get the idea. And you can click on one. So this is a post, this is a Brad post. If I click on it, beautiful. Now, even though we didn't write the JavaScript that powers that search module together, we can at least go scroll through the file and I can give you an idea of what I was doing. So I'm just exporting a JavaScript class. Up here, the first thing I'm doing when we instantiate a new instance of this class, I'm just injecting HTML into the DOM. So if you scroll down, you can find the method called inject HTML. That's literally just HTML to create, this styling, this interface for when you open up the search overlay. Cool. Then if you scroll back up, I'm just creating variables on the class that point towards different HTML elements. If we look at our events, there's an event for when you type into the field. There's an event for when you try to open or close the search overlay. And then that's really it. I'll show you the one interesting part. If you scroll down to about line 65, this is where we're actually sending off an asynchronous HTTP request to our Laravel URL, right? /search/ and then whatever term you're searching for. And then those results come back in real time, and then we're just going to render those results to the screen. So there's a function called render results HTML. You give it the raw JSON, and it's going to return a simple string of text that gets used as HTML. And I'm just using the DOM purify package to make sure that even if there was malicious incoming code, we're not going to actually render it as malicious HTML. So we're safe. Anyways, the big idea is that you and I set up this URL route in Laravel, /search/ the term, and then really it's just a matter of sending that request at the right time with the right, search value, and then showing the results. Now, really quick, before we bring this lesson to a close, there are two details I want to point out to you. So number one, if you jump into your command line, I have my npm run dev task up and running, but you can press Control-C to stop it. And what I want to draw your attention to is that you do need to manually run npm run build. So the dev task is not going to automatically run this for you every time you save a change to one of your files. So if you do actually want, in your public folder, the build folder, these files that are optimized for the public to download instead of us on our local development machine, if you want these to be updated and fresh, you do need to manually run this command, right? npm run build. So from time to time, you will want to run that. Cool, but for the most part, when you're actually working during the day, you would just leave this npm run dev task, you would just leave that up and running in the background. Cool, but the point is it's not going to automatically build the public version of the files for you. And then just to be clear, to help avoid confusion, the idea is that if you have the npm run dev task up and running, Laravel is going to actually load your CSS and JavaScript from memory. So it's absolutely not going to load these files from the hard drive. The idea though is if you don't have the dev task running, then Laravel as a fallback, it knows to load these files from the hard drive. Cool, right? And that's what the actual public visitors of your site would use. In other words, if you're on your local development machine and you're seeing some outdated CSS or JavaScript, odds are you're just, you forgot to run the dev task and or you forgot to run the build task. The other detail that I wanted to point out, in our search file that we copied and pasted from, you might notice on this line where we're actually sending the request to our Laravel URL, I'm using a package or I'm using something called Axios. Now, what in the world is Axios? Well, you could have just used the web browser's built-in fetch functions, but Axios has all sorts of extra features and it just makes sending HTTP requests really easy. Now, you might have noticed though that I'm not importing Axios at the top of this file, nor am I importing Axios in our main app.js file, nor did you and I have to go to the command line and say npm install Axios. So you might be wondering, where in the world is Axios? Where is this coming from? Or how are we successfully using it here? Well, the answer has to do with this very first line of code in our main JavaScript file that Laravel wrote for us. So Laravel imports its own file called Bootstrap, and it's just a little bit of boilerplate code that Laravel is setting up for you. Now, if you go into that Bootstrap file, you can see that Laravel is going to give us, global access from the window object. It's going to give us Lodash. It's going to give us Axios. And a bit of a spoiler, but in a future lesson, we're going to learn down here, it's also going to give us access to something for real-time events. So we'll have to uncomment that later. That's a bit of a spoiler. Don't worry, we will get to that. Now that is going to bring this lesson to a close. In our next lesson, we're going to set up the chat feature. Once again, we're not going to write the JavaScript line by line, but we are going to see how client-side JavaScript can interact with Laravel's real-time support or event system. This should be a ton of fun to set up, so let's keep things rolling, and I'll see you then.